I don't understand it. Just like I don't understand Snapchat. My kids just take pictures of their foreheads, and I don't understand why.
Welcome to episode 29 of the Humanist Agenda podcast. My name is Kenny,
I'm Sherry.
And I'm Rory.
and we're just a bunch of humanists talking about various topics that relate to our world and from a humanist perspective. So, it's 2020.
Yay.
Yay.
It
So-
didn't start out very great.
I know.
I lied about the whole, we're in a better timeline now. It's not.
Honestly,
not.
when
I lied.
by January 3rd, your comment on how 2020 was going to be a better year was replaying in my head. As I remember, I retweeted a journalist, and he basically, the only tweet that he sent out was, "It's only January 3rd." And by January 3rd, we were already in the midst of World War III. And
Oh, God. I know. There was maybe
What happened?
1 minute after midnight, and then it was done.
we had such a hopeful start, and then it all went to crapper.
Was it a hopeful start? I think we were all hopeful that it would change, but you can't change it. You just got to sit through it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not going to turn on a dime. We have to
Yeah.
get some kind of a bigger shift in order to get us to that better timeline that you're hoping for.
I know. I think just the idea that we were moving into a new decade and a new year, kind of made us think oh, it's a blank slate and all this crappy stuff that, I don't know, the US has done and that the world has done. It's all gonna go away and we're on a blank slate and we can fix this. We're in a new decade.
Our blank slate has already been stained.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
It's depressing.
okay, well, why don't we talk about something even more depressing today?
Good note to start on.
So today we're going to talk about social media and some topics related to it. And, social media is pretty prevalent in our lives now, and it has definitely changed our world. But there are some issues that have been popping up on the topic of social media, especially with Facebook. So I think when we ask someone, what social media platform is the most problematic, I think a lot of people immediately think of Facebook.
Well, a lot of the other platforms don't really have a chance to be problematic.
I-
Snapchat is just pictures, really. Well, I guess you can put captions on the pictures.
I feel like, even those platforms could potentially be problematic. So even like TikTok, which is kind of the more the fastest growing one right now. But maybe let's break it down in terms of the topics step by step. So, from your perspective, what platform or what issues kind of really stand out to you when it comes to social media? Maybe on the negative side.
Well, I'll jump in on this because the first thing that spreads out or sticks out to me is the spread of disinformation through social media platforms. And because I keep a few people with opposing political views on my Facebook.
Are they family members or friends?
People I knew from high school who I'm not an excommunicator like some people. I don't routinely cleanse my Facebook, so they just kind of jangle around in there and I see what they believe. And I just am constantly feeling like I should intervene and
So
say,
you don't engage? You don't engage in comments?
I
or anything
don't
like that?
because I've seen how fruitless it is to engage in their comment sections and try to correct them on these things they post. It has led to other people actively purging me from their Facebook.
Mhm.
And so I just quietly observe and feel sad about the false information that I see essentially going viral through certain networks.
Mhm. I find that too, especially if there's something I disagree with, I always have to stop myself because I have tried to engage before, but it usually ends up going down this rabbit hole that no one really cares about, and then I've wasted half of my day replying to comments.
Yeah, and nobody really listens on the internet. People just react. They don't really listen. So I definitely don't engage anymore. I used to. But now it's more passive aggressive, I think. So if and it's usually my family members, if one of my family members posts some incorrect meme or whatever it is, then I'll just find the correct Snopes article and like attach it to their
Oh, I've totally
post.
done that too.
Every time I do
Many
it.
times I see a posting, I'm like, I know this is wrong. I'm just gonna find a Snopes article and I'll post it with no comment.
Yes, that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking. No comments attached, just here's the correct
Oh, actually,
information.
I actually do one step better because I will actually post the Snopes comment. Sorry, the Snopes link, and then I'll go into the option in the post to actually turn off notifications for that post. So no matter, even if they reply back or try to
It's not going
challenge
to
me,
clog up your feed.
I'm never gonna see it.
People just ignore me when I post the Snopes now. They just don't engage with me. I'm like, that's fine. So I post with no comment, and I'm just like, here you go. You're either going to inform yourself or you're not. So I don't know. I kind of give up. And then sometimes when I see family members posting a news article that I don't think is correct or I think is misinformed, I will post an opposite one on my own wall. And then yeah, and then or just in general just posting stuff that I know is against my family's beliefs because I
You're a bit
just
of an antagonist, I guess.
I'm just
This
passive aggressive
this is
about
why
it.
they're gonna just ignore you.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I feel like I'm throwing something into the void of my family that maybe they'll hear it.
Mhm.
Maybe one of them.
So, I mean, this brings up the question of, should Facebook be policing content? So I think everyone's familiar with Mark Zuckerberg, who showed up. Is it Congress or whatever
The Senate?
the
Didn't he
Senate,
go to the Senate?
something like that. In the U.S. Basically, so Alexandria
Ocasio-Cortez.
Ocasio-Cortez had a very direct conversation slash challenge to Mark about whether she could post a false, some false content for an ad around Republicans supporting the Green New Deal. So, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg's answers was not very convincing. It doesn't. I mean, at the end of the day, Mark is not great in public,
Mhm.
even though he's the CEO. He's just a very poor, very, very awkward human being who is not great at being challenged. So even though he's the CEO, I feel like he definitely should not be on the stage
Mhm.
because he doesn't provide any really convincing arguments or answers. But I'm assuming you guys have seen that clip of AOC.
No.
Okay.
I know about Elizabeth Warren though, where she posted a political ad saying that Mark Zuckerberg had endorsed Trump and like went through this whole thing. And so like in the ad it said, you're probably shocked. And you might be thinking, how could this possibly be true? Well, it's not. Yeah, so like she admitted in the ad that it's not true, and just to be like, hey, look, you shouldn't allow people to post incorrect information. Like
Mhm.
fact is fact, and we
Yeah,
need to
but
follow
at the
that. We
same time,
can't.
I mean, this is an ad. Like you're paying money to put an ad. And if you were to do the equivalent on a billboard, that would be allowed, wouldn't it? Or if you hired, let's say, a plane to write a lie in the sky for a
Mhm.
political purpose, that would also be allowed.
Yeah, there's a strange acceptance of lying for one's
Mhm.
own political gain.
And think about all the political. I mean, we're not in the U.S. We're in Canada. But if I travel to the U.S. and I'm unfortunately when I turn on TV, I'm forced to watch some of these political ads. I mean, those ads could contain lies, but it's allowed.
Mhm.
Stephen Lecce right now is lying about the teachers union. So
Okay, I don't know about that, but
yeah, yeah, there's a whole
it's
bunch
an
of
ad on TV. Or
things that he says publicly are not true about sort of what we're fighting for as a teachers union and stuff
Oh,
like that.
maybe
And
you can put this into context for me, Sherry. I recently saw something, I'm not sure if it was from the Star or the Sun, whichever one has the conservative leaning, I'm guessing, posted this.
I think
It was
Sun
about
or Star, I don't know, both.
the Sun is more conservative.
Okay.
it was about parents holding children hostage, and it was an attack ad against teachers.
Parents holding children hostage?
Yeah,
How
that was
so?
the headline. I
With like what? In their house, they're like, you can't go, you're
I
grounded.
think it might be related to the type of curriculum or things that they're being told they have to learn. But I'll be honest,
Is it teachers holding
I
kids
didn't dig
hostage?
too
Is that what you
deeply.
mean? Or
Teachers holding
parents?
students or teachers holding students
Oh.
hostage was the headline.
Oh, okay. Maybe just that they're striking. I don't know. I really don't know.
I'd hope that you'd just encountered that, but that's
No.
okay.
I mean, there's so many lies out there. I've stopped reading them because they just make me furious. But
What were
like,
some against the teachers union that you were hinting at?
well, he was saying that he was showing up to the bargaining table and that they were all prepared, and we kept getting notices from our union saying, yeah, they didn't show up. They didn't come prepared to talk about this. We told them ahead of time we were talking about this, and they have not shown up. So he's not telling the truth.
Hmm.
Hmm. So going back to Facebook and social media, there's this interesting comparison we can make. I mean, Facebook is not a media. It's not a like a newspaper company. They're not reporters. It's literally a platform to
Yeah.
aggregate information and allow people to access and the platform also obviously disseminates information.
I
So
think the
it's
dissemination is the problematic part of
yeah,
it, though.
but the TV stations, radio stations do the same thing, and
It's actually in the law that Facebook can't be sued for the content generated by its users.
Mhm.
So they are protected on that front, which is why you see
Mhm.
the spread of so many.
Exactly. Like Facebook is not a content creator or generator, and that's kind of more in line with almost like a media company where
Hmm.
they're disseminating information. So it does bring up a question about if 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 Facebook is essentially following the existing model where TV stations do not have to essentially fact check ads, does Facebook really should Facebook really be fact checking ads or postings? I mean, Facebook. I mean, we can go through some of the things that Facebook has currently done. So depending on the posting, sometimes they will flag a post as
Probably
uh,
hate speech would be one.
yeah, actually, so they have certain rules. So obviously, if there's violence, it gets banned. If it's hate speech, it gets banned usually. If it's flagged. Uh, but then when it comes to these political ads, because it's kind of it's not it doesn't show nudity, it doesn't show violence.
It just
It
shows
it
bold-faced lies.
could be I mean, it's a lie, but because they are not the arbiter of truth, they will allow it. So it's very similar to like a TV channel or a newspaper. Like even if you think about conservative newspapers, I mean they are gonna allow whatever they want in their newspaper, and even the same with more progressive newspapers, right? They have that determination of I will put what I want in this piece of media.
This seems like a good point for me to bring up, though, that we risk turning it into a very unequal platform if we do this, because for political ads in particular, there's money involved in how frequently the ads are shown
Hmm.
and such. And so if you're telling lies, but you're able to tell your lies the loudest because you've put the most money into it,
Hmm.
shouldn't that be problematized?
I but that's
Doesn't
also
that put some onus on Facebook?
but that's also on the TV space, right? Like, so for example, Trump, he outspends everyone in TV ads and also in Facebook ads. So, it, I mean, Facebook is just doing what we've always done in TV
Hmm.
and newspapers. So it's interesting that there's this huge kind of backlash against Facebook when we've been doing this with every other medium for the last 50 years. So.
I think the difference though is that bubble that we get put into when we go into that feedback loop. So where you start like clicking on links that are, maybe I don't want to say triggering because I hate that word now, but like triggering to you where you're like, "Oh, I want to read that," or "Oh, I disagree with that," or something like that. And then Facebook generates more of that content for you. So you get stuck in this loop of the same content, so it keeps getting fed back to you. So that's where a lot of the problem comes out. Because I read a bit about the New Zealand Christchurch mosque shooting and how so what happened was there was a live stream of the actual shooting that didn't get taken down until like 12 minutes or so after the video ended. Um, and the reason why a lot of people say that he did this shooting was because he kept getting this feedback loop of
So,
violent.
well, when you post a video or start streaming a video, um, the video continues to gain popularity as more and more viewers view the video. But because it's a live video, the moderators will not be able to quickly flag it, because what do you actually need to flag a video? You actually need people to watch the video and then flag the video. So I think it's almost a reflection of our society. When people are watching these videos, do people automatically think this is wrong and I'm going to flag it, or I'm going to just keep watching it? I think
Oh
the
boy.
the hypothesis here is actually people continue to watch it without flagging it, which is why it took so long for them to take the video down.
But also the other point is that like that shooter who did this got stuck in that neo-Nazi feedback
Hmm.
loop where he actually got ideas from it to do this. That's what people have sort of said, is
Hmm.
that the shooter found the ideas through this feedback loop,
He was
right?
receiving feedback?
Well,
Well,
no. Like so like when you go on Facebook, they attach certain tags to your account, right? So
Okay.
like things that you click on, so maybe I like dogs and I like so then I'm looking at dog posts and I'll get more and more dog posts.
Mm-hmm.
mhm. It's
And
the
more and
same
more
thing with, yeah,
advertisements
it's the
about
same
it.
thing with Google Ads, right? The moment you go into a website for guitars, suddenly you see ads for guitars
This happened to
everywhere.
me with comic books. I bought a couple comic books off Amazon, and now my feed is just comics everywhere.
Exactly. So when you go onto a website that's maybe more right leaning, maybe a little bit more crazy, you kind of go into this loop where the type of ads that you see, the type of postings that you see align with your view of the world. And that's how social media keeps you on the platform, because it keeps feeding you what you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So I don't know if this is a theory or if they've figured this out, that the guy just found a whole bunch of content about neo-Nazis and violence against, the other people, that it like induced him to go and do
I
this.
see what you're saying. Like he
Yeah.
he found himself in this echo chamber of
Mhm.
just reverberating the viewpoint of hate back at him from every corner that he looked, because Facebook has created this enclosed space that feeds you things you're interested in.
And some of the things that he got fed triggered him to do this.
I
They were
understand.
very specific about violence against,
Mm-hmm.
not the white man, but like, people who go to a mosque or Jewish people or whatever the
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely is a dangerous element. Be feeding information that can build up hate.
Mhm. And like it's spreading misinformation as well, because I know that Facebook got in a lot of hot water recently, or maybe not so recently, about the anti-vax stuff. So when you
Mm,
looked up the word vaccinate on the search bar, it would automatically, the first things that came up were like about anti-vax
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, it still goes back to, should Facebook be policing this? And, you know, when it comes to, as you're comparing different platforms, Facebook is not doing anything that's different than other forms of media. So one of the thing we'll go through maybe some other things that Facebook has done to try to combat this. So I mentioned they try to flag postings that
mm-hmm.
could be false or controversial, and I forgot what the specific tag is, but it's actually like it shows up on the title of the article. I normally don't see it because, well, I don't really fall down those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
But the other thing that they recently have done as well is, we talk about political ads and any type of ads. They on their website now, you can actually go into their ad library, and you can actually search by various groups to actually see what groups are posting what ads. So even if they target a specific ad to a very small population, that ad is fully public so that you can actually search and actually find it. And this creates a lot of visibility in terms of if you wanted to see all the ads that Donald Trump is using and targeting, you can find it on their ad library to try to create that visibility so that people can fact check his like Donald Trump's ads
Hmm.
much more easily versus letting Facebook do all the fact checking. They want to enable other people to fact check it. Um, and I think it's really interesting. So I did go down this little rabbit hole of actually comparing Donald Trump's ads, and I went through Bernie Sanders' ads and Elizabeth Warren's ads. I I think actually, to be honest, I think Donald Trump's digital marketing team is really, really good. Like when I went through his ads, they're just very, very well targeted, like
Hmm.
very specific keywords to capture as many of their demographics as possible. They actually tailor all their ads to very specific groups of people, like veterans who are injured or veterans who are, in this location, hunters, things like. I mean, the very, very specific ads. And I personally found like the Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warren ads, they were very
Too general?
general, very
Yeah.
fluffy. Like, we all love everyone. I'm just like, oh no, this is not how you're gonna win.
And it's surprising they haven't realized that yet, because that's something that I've heard about as well, is that the reason he won in 2016 was because of these Facebook ads that he had
Mhm.
that really targeted a specific audience that he knew he needed to
Yeah,
get.
and we do have to keep in mind, obviously, like Donald Trump has significantly more money as well to
Hmm.
actually have people spend time targeting these ads. And in terms of the spending, um, like the top spender is Donald Trump. He's like probably like spending 5 times more than Bernie or Elizabeth.
So he
So
can afford the
he
best.
can afford the best, and I think the Democrats sooner or later need to kind of pull their money together to actually.
Yeah. Well, this brings us circling back to social media as an unequal platform because Donald can pump as many funds as he wants. Do you think, a spending cap? I know that this would be kryptonite to
But
Facebook, but
why?
to cap the
But
amount of,
why do people believe in these ads? Like when you look at the ads, it's very clearly an ad. Like it says right there, this is an ad like paid for by.
sure,
I think it's also to me a failure of people's ability to.
you're putting the onus on the citizen
I'm putting
then.
the onus on the citizens. I mean, just being real here. I mean, we see ads all the time on TV and whatnot. I mean, you must know you're being influenced and you're being encouraged to buy products or think a different way. And at least
Sure.
with Facebook, it's pretty clear this is an ad.
I don't know. I don't know if everyone has the same analytical skills as we do in this room, or the more educated public who have a post-secondary education can have for the critical thinking to see through these ads and see what they really are. It it might be too high of a bar to set for the citizen, which is why I would lean more towards capping and engineering from the structural institutional level, just saying you can't spend this much money
Hmm.
on ads
I
and
can
create
agree
an
with that.
uneven
Yeah,
platform.
I like that idea. And obviously, I think it was mentioned. Twitter banned all
They did,
political
yes.
ads, which is I think an interesting move on their part because they
Yeah.
essentially now have divorced themselves of the issue. And Jack Dorsey, who's runs Twitter, he challenged Facebook to do the same. Although if I think maybe the only thing that he has excluded out of that conversation is, his claim was, well, they don't really make that much money off of political
Yeah, I was
ads,
going to bring that up. It's
but
about
but
the revenue
I know,
stream.
but the problem is no one spends a lot of money on Twitter, but a lot of people spend money on
Yeah.
Facebook. And Facebook, that is a huge revenue stream for them, including, I mean, the biggest spending from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth is also on Facebook ads.
Well,
Mm.
that's where the boomers are, right? Like, you're not
Mhm.
gonna find many boomers on Twitter. It's just not
But
a platform
what's
that they
also really
like.
interesting? Joe Biden doesn't spend that much on Facebook. I'm
No?
actually surprised by that.
Hmm.
Like when I looked at the graph of kind of their spending,
Was he
he
right in line with Warren and Sanders?
no, he is like a tiny fraction. Bernie
Really?
Sanders and Elizabeth are huge compared to all the other Democrats. Like
Oh,
almost again
really?
5 times, like 5 times larger than Andrew Yang and
In
others
terms
like
of
that.
spending on Facebook, is that what
Yeah,
you're talking about? Oh, really?
yeah, I found that really interesting. So it's because I actually would have assumed people like Joe Biden would be spending a lot of money,
Yeah.
right?
He
Because
seems like
he's
a real hopeful for the.
and also he sways towards that demographic where they might be on Facebook, just clicking on things and
Yeah.
believing things.
Yeah. Yeah. People just click without thinking, I think. That's an issue too.
I was really interested by that whole revenue stream thing, though, because the article that I read was comparing. In fact, I think it had a news clip of a Facebook representative and a Twitter representative. And because Twitter didn't have as much of their revenue tied up in political advertising, they were able to take the moral high ground
Of
and
course.
stand above
It's very
Facebook.
easy. It's very easy to take the moral high ground when you don't make a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
It's a moral high ground that's very shaky, though, because, like, even allowing, I've heard the case made against allowing Donald Trump to have a Twitter account
Hmm.
is, like, not right because he promotes a lot of hate speech, right?
Mhm.
So
And
he,
he had, I mean, in some of his postings, it really sounded like he was inciting violence or
absolutely.
implied,
And
right?
that's what people
Yeah.
say, and they say he shouldn't have an account, but yet Twitter allows him to because he generates so much
But you know
interest and
what
so
would be
much ad revenue.
interesting is, let's say he is out of when he gets out of office or loses, hopefully.
Yeah.
If he is out of office, will Twitter shut him down? I think that is going to be a very interesting.
He might still be a golden goose. There might still be
Yeah.
people flocking to know what Donald thinks, even if he gets the boot
Mhm.
Oh, totally. He's not going anywhere. No, he's capitalizing on it for sure.
as a fixture. I find this really interesting. There was actually a summit in 2019 in the summer, the social media summit, that alleged companies
Oh, I heard
like
about it.
Facebook were suppressing conservative viewpoints.
They want to play the victim. Like the
Yeah.
conservatives always play the victim. Conservatives, Christians, they play the
Yet they
victim.
spend the most money on ads and are significantly more prevalent
I
on
laughed out loud
postings.
when I read it. But there was a whole summit about this. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it interesting. There was recently a meeting between Donald Trump and Mark Zuckerberg, and it was a private meeting, but the idea was that because now like Warren and Biden, well, I don't actually know if Biden is well, Bernie Sanders is also talking about like splitting up these big tech companies and trying to clamp down on regulations. How like he had this meeting with Trump to kind of sway him away from making any of those regulations because the rumor was Trump was going to make some regulations. Um so it's interesting how these tech companies have this summit and they know they have this power over politics.
mhm.
It's very interesting.
Hmm. So,
Yeah.
yeah, going back to kind of breaking up the big tech companies, one in last year, Warren had an article on Medium talking about why she wants to break up these big tech companies. I'll let me give a counter opinion to that because her article is kind of based on two premises. It's really around mergers are bad because it essentially wipes out competition and limits innovation. And then the other argument is around it, these big companies create a proprietary environment that prevents smaller companies from forming. The, the only problem with that argument is when it comes to the reason why we have so many of these new companies like TikTok, even though we don't, I mean, I'm assuming our demographic in this room here, we don't really use TikTok, but the
I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of it.
I don't even know what TikTok is. Anyways, it's basically the new social media platform for teenagers right now. So the reason we have all these other companies like TikTok and Snapchat emerging is because there's especially with these startup companies, there's an incentive for people to start new companies because they want to be acquired.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that drive to want to be acquired that are actually springing up all these tiny companies. So you have the big players, but you have thousands and thousands of these smaller tech companies kind of testing new models, and certain ones suddenly gain immense popularity and immense scale, like TikTok. So that's kind of one of the counter arguments to mergers are bad.
Is the idea that TikTok will be bought by a larger tech company and then integrated into their
To be
platform?
honest, I'm actually a little afraid that TikTok will buy other people.
Oh, they're big enough
They're
to.
big. They're
I
big,
see.
Oh, really?
and they're also controlled by the Chinese government.
Oh,
So to be
uh-huh.
honest, I'm actually a little afraid of TikTok. They
Huh.
have the resources from the Chinese government. They're a Chinese company, so they have potential. They could be influenced by the Chinese government.
That's interesting. With China, at least the prevailing thought regarding China is that they're bigger on censorship
But
than the
I think
West.
that's the problem because
So they're going to bring through TikTok a new level of censorship?
there's a level of influence, and there's a question of, do we want to be providing our social media information to
Mm-hmm.
a company that's controlled by a Chinese state government? Um, and so the other argument with Warren is around proprietary marketplaces. I think her example was really around like Amazon, about how Amazon's closing up shops and things like that. I know like Andrew Yang also has this argument. I think that maybe the only issue with that is they are comparing Amazon to the traditional, e-commerce business,
Mm.
whereas Amazon now is actually a marketplace platform where you actually have thousands of small businesses using Amazon
Yeah.
as a transactional marketplace. So in theory, actually, there are a lot more new businesses that have been formed because of Amazon being a platform for small businesses to sell across the
Yeah,
world.
absolutely.
So there's, uh, but to me, it doesn't mean big companies are good. Like that's not really, I think, the argument that I'm making, but it's around. I think we have to know the nuances in that. There's a reason why, for example, there were antitrust lawsuits against Microsoft, because Microsoft was really controlling the ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
and forcing people to use their platform versus Amazon, where you can use our platform or not. They're not forcing anyone to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where
They've just made themselves so attractive.
exactly they've made themselves so attractive that people flock to them. And there's also a reason why we all use Google search.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to break up search engine to smaller pieces. We want the best, and everyone wants to use the best versus Bing. No one uses Bing, right?
Only in the movies.
Ask Jeeves.
Exactly. So there's a reason why scale is good because it provides customer value, but anyways, obviously there's issues that we still have to deal with.
I would be very, very curious to see what Facebook or other platforms look like in Singapore, because Singapore has criminalized fake news and they do hold tech companies accountable and
Mhm.
provide fines for, displaying and making viral news out of fake news.
Mm-hmm. Well, at a certain point, I mean, like platforms like Facebook could exit a country, right? So one example is Facebook is not in China. And I mean, to me, I actually think this is what's really good about Facebook. Facebook has a set of priorities. Their priority, one of their top priorities is we will not do censorship. We will not.
Oh,
We
are you sure? I
Yeah,
read an
Facebook's
article
more
that
on the.
Facebook created a censorship programs and tried to sell it to China.
They're not in China. Like if you go to China, you can't use
They're
Facebook.
not, but like the Chinese government didn't buy into it.
Oh, so it was like a marketing ploy to get their foot in the door in China?
Yeah.
I see.
What do you mean?
Facebook Lite. Facebook censored a new version of
Oh,
Facebook.
like a censored
Yes.
Facebook.
Like a
Yeah.
version of it,
They
yeah.
tried to bring in some like censored software for China specifically so that Chinese citizens could go on Facebook legally.
but it
Yeah,
didn't take by the sounds of it.
that would never happen. The
No, but
whole
that's the point is, like, you're saying, like, Facebook's taking this moral high ground
no,
of
no,
not
no.
being China, but not without, like,
I'm not talking about
trying
moral
to.
high ground. I'm talking
Oh,
about like
okay.
their priority. Let's think of it as a priority stack. Their priority is we don't want to be people that are monitoring or kind of monitoring content and making decisions about what content is allowed or not allowed. Like that is what they're trying to avoid. Like everything that they're doing right now is trying to avoid that. They don't want to have people looking at content unless they have to, which is why they're flagging for nudity and violence. That is the entire business model. The entire business model is we want to have as few people touching content and using the algorithm to disseminate content. But that's not what the Chinese government wants. The Chinese government wants someone to find all the anti-China postings and shut it down.
Hmm.
So I think it's not about Facebook trying to be moral, but it's about their current business model in terms of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, there'd just be a real mismatch in the Chinese market.
Yeah.
I get it. Taking things in a different direction, working for a professor, I've recently read some articles on how Facebook and other social media platforms open up so many new avenues for criminality and predatory criminality just based on how much information people themselves are sharing on this platform. I don't know. Do you think that should be scaled back or moderated to some extent? I mean, there are privacy filters that can already be applied, but I don't know how effective they are at preventing criminal forms of, let's take fraud as an example.
Mhm.
Like somebody skims through your Facebook profile and they find enough information that they're able to convince your bank that they're you and that they've simply forgotten a few key numbers and all of a sudden they have control of your assets. How can we prevent those types of dangers?
You can't. I mean, yeah. I mean, this is one of those. To me, I mean, it's a little bit of personal responsibility, but obviously, I mean, the platform needs to be secure in terms of knowing what, by default, what you shouldn't be sharing unless the user explicitly says, "I want to share this information." But yeah, I think it's tricky because as we get more and more of our identity and our information into the internet, becomes more and more easy for someone to spoof your identity
Hmm.
and take it essentially.
They could even achieve it, I think, through images to an extent on one of the other platforms, just looking at the places you've been and
Hmm.
the interactions you've had with other people. They could start to build that spoof profile.
One of the things that worries me most is deep fakes. Like,
Mm.
I worry that a lot more deep fakes will start to happen, and especially in this next coming US election. They already tried it on Nancy Pelosi and they made her speech slurred, and then they tried to say that she was drunk or whatever it was, or sick or something like that. So I worry that these deep fakes are going to come up, and you could essentially take somebody's identity through that, right? Like you could create these videos as if you are that person.
Yeah, certainly a huge political ramification for deepfakes. I watched the one on a TED Talk once with the different Obamas, and they said, "Which one's the real Obama? None of them are real." And you thought at least one was. But yeah, deepfakes are progressing very quickly.
People are working on algorithms to try to identify deep fakes, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a cat and mouse game where
Hmm.
your detection methods are trying to outpace the creation methods. And but I feel like also, I mean, let's say we did a deep fake on Trump. It would still not surprise if he said something
He's so
outrageous.
extreme. Yeah,
Exactly.
there's nothing
Like, no,
surprising.
exactly. Even if you did something crazy, everyone's just gonna nod their heads and still probably vote for him.
Yeah, some people be like, "Well, I guess this is who we are now." So we've taken it to that other level we
Yeah.
didn't even know existed.
But then do you think it's the same the other way around, that if you do a deep fake on, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren, and then convince people who are maybe the Trump Obama voters, that, oh, like Warren's not worth voting for, so I'm going to vote for Trump again?
I
Could
think that's a
happen.
risk. I mean, really,
Yeah.
the deciders are really going to be the people in the middle, right? I mean, people are
Hmm.
already on their camps. They're going to either vote for Trump or they're going to vote for a Democrat, and it's really the people in the middle that will be making a decision in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. I'm worried about that election.
Yeah. Well, statistically speaking, Trump is probably going to win. This,
Oh
I mean,
no.
usually in a re-election, the president typically gets reelected.
Oh, that's sad.
On that cheery note, I'm going to quickly redirect us to the last bit of information that I looked up, and that was about kind of an anti-censorship bend to this one. It's about the YouTube content creators and how their videos can be flagged for the smallest little inclusion of media that maybe they don't entirely own, but they've used it for some critical essay purpose. But then their content gets yanked, and all the revenue that they were generating through their YouTube channel gets yanked as well.
I think that is actually really interesting as well because YouTube has been cracking down on demonetizing a lot of videos because they don't want to risk losing advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the reason why they've been spending a lot of effort on demonetization of a lot of videos. The moment you have, a tiny piece of content that, a glimpse of content that isn't yours, or you mention anything related to LGBT, you're demonetized.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know about the LGBT thing.
Because of the sensitive nature of the content, it gets flagged, and they want to avoid the advertisers making a fuss about. So, for example, if in the U.S. the Million Moms,
Yeah, 1 million moms.
1 million moms, like the moment they make a fuss, advertisers get scared.
Not even 1 million moms. It's like 10. But they're so loud.
10 with the voice of 1 million.
Exactly.
That's the issue, is that they're so loud. It's whoever is the loudest in society.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those that disagree with them, like, it's not an issue to us. We don't care. And so we don't speak up quite as loudly.
Yeah. So there have been a lot of like LGBT content that has been demonetized because they talk about sex. Because you're an LGBT person, right? I mean, the topic of sex eventually comes up.
I feel like this is a whole can that I actually didn't even know about, that there was so much censorship of LGBT content on YouTube.
On the flip side, there are also conservatives that are arguing about the censorship because, their content is too controversial for advertisers.
Yeah.
So I think YouTube has a really big challenge here because they are trying to create money. And actually, from my understanding, they're actually not that profitable, like the YouTube platform. So
I would hope that the creators are receiving.
Sorry, the creators are making money, but actually, as a business,
the YouTube
business is actually not very profitable.
Right.
So that's why there's so much pressure for them to not lose advertisers.
Right.
Money makes everything worse.
Money is guiding our moral politics, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking ever since you talked about, Kenny, the argument that we are selling our data to these social media platforms and getting nothing in return, like it makes me...
that's Andrew Yang's argument.
Oh, sorry, like you talked about it.
Yeah.
Though Andrew Yang's argument.
Yang gang.
You know what? I really come around to Yang. I am actually really rooting for him now, and I didn't before. You've convinced me. Anyways, but like how we're selling our personal data, but they're still making money off this ad revenue, and they're making money doubly off our data from the ad revenue because there's that algorithm, right? It's amazing how like money is driving this whole thing. Yeah.
So we should be shareholders of that, and we should get a dividend.
Yeah.
A freedom dividend.
A freedom dividend.
But it's making me really conflicted about whether or not I should be on Facebook because my output, what I'm getting, is not as much as my input, what I'm giving away.
But even though, so I mentioned earlier before we start recording that I'm not really active on Facebook, and I mean that's one of the reasons I just didn't really want to give too much of my activity and my preferences to Facebook. But the only problem is Facebook has been very good at acquiring other platforms,
I was just gonna
which
say, yeah.
means the the two other platforms that I use a lot right now are Instagram and WhatsApp.
Mhm.
Kenny
Both of
woke up
them
one morning with a Facebook account.
both of them are still owned by Facebook, so they still have my
They
information.
still gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. I know. We even have an Instagram for our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
we're
Like,
giving into
The
Facebook.
tentacles are already wrapped around
I
us.
know.
and
Yeah, I'm just
and
so
the Facebook
conflicted.
advertising platform is just so easy because you can not only do Facebook ads, you can also simultaneously turn it into Instagram ads as well.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
just make it so easy for anyone to buy ads.
Yeah. I don't know. What is the answer then? How do I not feel conflicted about being a part of Instagram and Facebook? Like, I don't know if there's a way to not feel it.
Why don't you just join TikTok and support the Chinese government?
Perfect.
All my students are on TikTok, and it's so annoying because at the end of class, I'll see them like dancing, and I'm like, stop making TikToks already. Put up your chairs, go home.
This actually sounds kind of awesome.
Every dance gives one more cent to the Chinese government.
Oh, yeah.
TikTok makes you dance? I think I kind of
Everyone.
love this platform.
Everyone's dancing and everyone's.
Well, I asked my kids what it is because I don't understand it. Because I was like, all I see is you guys dancing. Like, is that all it is? It's just you guys dancing? They're like, no, it's so much more. And like, we
It's
do
short.
these.
It's short video. Essentially, it's like Instagram is your platform to view pictures, but TikTok is like very short
Is
videos.
it like a Vine?
It's like a Vine.
The
Okay.
Yep.
new Vine.
It's
It's
the
the
new
new
Vine.
Vine.
Yeah.
All right.
Except there's always music that's playing in the background, from what I've gathered. Because I was like, is it just dancing and stuff? And then one of my students showed me a video of her just like I don't know, sitting there, and there's music playing in the background, and I was like, that's still like a dancing
Yeah.
video. Like, this is
Uh,
ridiculous.
But to be honest, so I have kind of perused TikTok.
Have you?
Their algorithm is really good. Like I think
Mm.
the reason why TikTok is so popular is the algorithm's really good at giving you what you want to see, and it quickly learns what you want to see within the first few videos. So within a few minutes, my TikTok was filled with cat videos.
Nailed you
Yeah.
down in seconds.
Yep, they nailed me down. I was like, ah,
That's funny.
yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, whoever developed the algorithm is really smart.
Do you still have a TikTok account?
Yep.
Okay, and you don't feel conflicted about your information going to the Chinese government?
I'm okay now because I'm not posting anything on
Mhm.
there. I mean, the only information they know is really my preference because they
For
know
cat videos.
they know what I like to watch, and it's not about even like clicking they have it's basically a heart, so similar to Instagram. Like it's not about just what you click. It really is also calculating the algorithm based on how long you're staring at the video as well.
Oh.
So if it knows that you are staring at the cat video more times or multiple times,
But what if I got up to use the washroom?
it'll figure that out too. It'll figure out based on like subsequent videos. So it's actually a really well constructed algorithm. But
Sounds like it.
yeah,
Aren't they still getting some information from you though? Like, do they know your IP address and stuff like that?
yeah, they do. But I
So,
mean, I don't know how useful that is, other than I mean, it's useful because of location. Because it's also really good. I remember my first few videos were also about Tim Hortons.
mm,
Like they had people doing videos related to Tim Hortons, and then recently there's videos on the snow in like Newfoundland, so they kind of
Right.
know based on your location what are you probably likely to be interested in.
That looked bad in Newfoundland. I've only seen the CBC article, but I'm seeing snow piles like up as high as houses. It looks intense.
Yeah. So okay, but going back to
Right.
how do we solve this other than giving your information to the Chinese government?
I give up. I'm just gonna give it away now.
Yeah.
Here you go, all of my
Yeah.
information.
I just want my money for it. I want my dividend.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how we avoid this because we get some value, I think, right? I mean, so like for example, I use Instagram a lot, and I find, I mean, there's a little bit of value in it. I get to see things that I want to see.
Sure, we get the networking value. We get
Hmm.
connected to people and things that we want to see and
Hmm.
interact with.
We organized this podcast via Facebook.
Or at least you and I do. Rory and I text. I have to be the intermediary because Rory doesn't really use Facebook. I have to be like, okay, I'm going to go on Messenger and message Kenny, and then I'm going to message Rory on my texting.
It's a good thing you're here, Sherry. If it were Rory and Kenny, the train would get decoupled all the time.
Texting? Who texts anymore?
Well, Rory does. So,
To
like,
be honest,
I
actually,
do...
that is a little bit of a serious question because I actually don't know who I text anymore.
Serious.
I don't really text. The only people I text with is my mom.
My wife doesn't use social media, so I text her.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She hates it. Yeah.
Mm.
She has almost like a burner account just for work, just to connect with like people, but she doesn't have a picture. She doesn't have information about herself on there. It's just like to connect with networking stuff, but like, yeah, she hates Facebook.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some value in social media, but I mean, for you guys, do you feel like there's enough value to want to keep it, or are you gonna after this podcast delete all your accounts?
Oh, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to, even though I barely use it, I'm still not going to delete it because I see the value in it in terms of every once in a while I will connect with someone or, learn about some event that I might actually want to attend
Mhm.
through Facebook.
I think at the end of the day, I mean, this is
I might
about
scale back my information though. That might be my
yes,
take home is the place of birth and stuff like that might be disappearing from my Facebook pretty
but
soon.
but they already know it. You already entered it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's already in
Yeah,
there.
it's published, I
Yeah,
know.
they know. No matter even if you delete it, they know. So
Yeah, even just going on their platform, they can tell your IP address. They know where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's too late. I typed it the first time, and of course, they can locate me through IP location.
yeah, so um, this needs to be controlled by regulations. Like at the end of the day.
I thought you were anti-regulation.
That was the stance he took for devil's advocate's sake.
Oh,
Now maybe we'll get the true
Well,
opinion.
no, yeah, I'm for reasonable regulations. I mean, I think the reality is with these social media companies, the nature of startups should be do as much as you can, kind of push the boundaries, which I think is great. Like I want social media companies and startups to push the boundaries. We have Uber pushing the boundaries of taxi regulations. We have social
Mhm.
media pushing the boundaries of media dissemination regulations. But I think this is where I think we need to kind of put some smart people together to try to figure out the right regulations to create the right incentives for companies. I'm not really about, for me, it's not about trying to create banning this or banning that or breaking up companies A, B, and C, but it's about trying to set up the right infrastructure and incentives to get the right behaviors out of companies and people.
Like I've said before, I want to have a say over what information I give. So if
Mhm.
I decide to give you my location, maybe I get like $100 in the mail or something,
Mhm.
right? Like I should be allowed to sell my information.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. To me, that makes sense too. I mean, if you're gonna profit from my data, I feel like I should get a share of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, since you're the source, the data originates with you.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I totally agree with that.
I would do so many surveys. Like, yeah, I'd be all over it. Give me your money, please.
Much more active internet participant.
Yeah, because as it is, I feel really conflicted. I just want to delete my Facebook and start over. Like I kind of every time I go on Facebook, I'm like I don't want to post anything. I don't want to add anything to things I've said. I feel like I just want to go back and like wash my slate clean because I'm
Mhm.
sure I said some stupid stuff when I was a kid because I was started
Yeah.
in university, right? Like
It's too late.
it's too late. I've already said oh, going to McDonald's to eat a burger. And that was my status. Like
It'll
It's
lay dormant
stupid.
until your political career takes off. Then someone will find it.
Exactly. The vegans are gonna go after you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I'm kind of on the stance that I don't want Facebook to be policing content, because to me, actually, that's in the wrong direction we should be going in. I while I like certain aspects of corporations, I don't think corporations should have the power to kind of police content, and I think that is why. Um, Allowing Facebook to not police content is okay. It doesn't mean that they have really solved all their problems, because clearly there's still problems. But I think definitely at the top of my priority is Facebook should not be policing content. Like that starts a slippery slope with corporations controlling content. Because when at the end of the day, I'm thinking of worst case scenario. You still have Trump in the government. If Facebook is forced to police content, Facebook is a U.S. company. Like they could be pressured legally to um, police the right content in quotations.
I think it's a balancing act where you have, you know, I'm with you. I totally don't want the content being policed. I want as much free speech as possible in that realm. And at the other side, finding some way to prevent certain moneyed interests from speaking the loudest on these platforms, which is why I think just some sort of responsibility imposed on Facebook and other providers to only allow so much, and whether that means capping the amount of revenue they get from certain people who are wanting to provide content on their site.
hmm
If that's the avenue, then that's the avenue.
hmm
There we go.
Okay, cool. We solved it. No, no. I feel like this is going to be an ongoing topic, and I'm sure other things are going to pop up and other issues will pop up in the future. And
It won't be settled by an overly general statement like mine.
yeah, well,
Many
and
details to be figured out.
well, in the meantime, let's better jump on board the TikTok bandwagon, or else we're gonna fall
You
behind.
need to teach me about TikTok. As soon as we wrap, you guys are going to teach me how to use the TikToks.
I don't understand it. Just like I don't understand Snapchat. My kids just take pictures of their foreheads, and I don't understand why they say it's the prettiest part of them that day, and so they want to emphasize it. I don't understand. It's pictures of the ceiling. What are we doing? I walk past them in class, and they're trying to hide their phone at the same time, but like it's a picture of the ceiling.
So they missed the forehead. They just caught nothing but ceiling that time.
Well, yeah, sometimes it's just ceiling and just like a phrase that they wrote, a caption.
Sherry, 10 years ago, this is what people were saying. Why is Sherry posting about she's going to McDonald's? We're the old folks now. We are the old folks.
And I feel old when I see my students do this and I question what is their thought process. I don't know. I feel so old. I will never get my youth back.
That's okay.
Oh.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us on this wonderful discussion on social media and how we're old.
Next time we're going to talk about reparations.
Yay!
Yay!
Oh, that's not happy. We really should find something happy to
We
kind of
will. I think
intersperse our
I
episodes.
think we should.
So
Maybe
uh,
cats. We're still
we'll
going to go on
brainstorm.
the cats train.
Cats and cat videos.
yeah, well, let's end off on a happy note. Definitely, if you're really interested in cats, there are lots of great cat memes on the internet and social media. I'll post some links.
If the internet is good for anything, it's cat memes and cat videos.
Exactly. So, okay, thanks everyone.
Till next time.
See ya.
Bye.
By the way, I saw the new Star Wars. It made me sad on so many levels.
I did
I heard horrible
too.
things.
It was a half hour too long. They needed to take out the talking to Luke and
I think
Leia.
it was about 2.5 hours too long.
Well, yeah, okay. I agree with that.
And I didn't even I kind of liked the first two. but then this one came and it just took everything I liked about the first two and like threw it through a fan service blender, and out came this nasty slurm of a product, and everything about it made me sad.
There's only one person we can blame, JJ.
He did write it, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Then yeah.
He basically took the previous director's work and decided, I don't like this.
Yeah. And it's very apparent because a lot of interesting plot threads from the previous one are just thrown away. And there's a lot of rushed nonsense, like Kylo Ren's redeemed, and now he's not going to say a single word for the rest of the movie. He's just going to run in, do stuff, and die.
You know what I saw recently that I'm really into now? The Expanse. I started watching
I've
it.
always liked The
I
Expanse.
started watching
What's
it.
The Expanse?
A much better space opera.
So it
than
was
Star
brought up
Wars.
by on our podcast before.
Oh, and then I
Uh,
probably was like, oh, I want to watch that. And
yeah.
then I
And then you
just
forgot all about it.
So
Yeah.
The Expanse is basically into the future after humans have colonized Mars and the asteroid belt.
Okay.
And all of the same problems we have today end up in the solar system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think someone has described it as Game of Thrones, but in space. So,
Okay. My favorite space thing is still Firefly. This is an epic one. Have you seen Firefly?
bits and pieces.
Okay. Nathan Fillion? Oh my god.
He is pretty fun. I
Yeah.
like Nathan Fillion.
I'd go straight for Nathan.
Yeah. The hammer.
The
is
hammer.
Okay, never mind.
Have you watched that now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you have.
Captain Hammer is the win.
Because didn't you, last time we referenced it, you hadn't watched it?
Oh,
and we
no.
made all these references or something?
I
There was
saw Dr.
something.
Horrible in third year of my undergrad. A long
Okay.
time ago.
There was something that we referenced that was really funny
Oh, maybe it went over my head because I'd
What?
forgotten.
in a previous episode that
About
Rory was like, I don't understand.
And you were referencing Dr. Horrible?
I thought we were referencing Dr. Horrible. Maybe it wasn't that.
No, I think it was something else
Mm.
because we all laughed at the hammer joke, if I recall.
Okay.
I had to bleep it.
Oh, did you?
I-
Oh, yeah, the part.
No, now I have to bleep that.